Peace be with you. Dear friends, welcome to the prayer series When I Cannot Pray, 35th episode. In the last episode, we have discussed about imagination, forming images. But here, we will discuss on fantasy. Actually, St. John of the Cross in the Ascent of Mount Carmel, Book 2, Chapter 12, Paragraph 3 says, it forms the images. Fantasy forms the images. When various images are combined and quite a new image or imagination is produced in our mind, it is called fantasy. Fantasy is helpful in the beginning stages of prayer. Fantasy works like this. We have seen a mountain and we have also seen a piece of gold ornament. Consequently, we are able to fantasize in our mind golden mountain, which in reality does not exist. We are able also to fantasize in our mind a being having lion's head with a human body. But in reality, such a being does not exist. During prayer, fantasies can occur in our mind, especially when we meditate on heaven, God the Father, saints, choirs of angels, etc. Who has seen heaven? No one has. Who has seen God the Father? No one. Yet we are able to make some beautiful meditations on heaven with God the Father sitting on a golden throne and tiny angels flying around. What a wonderful capacity human fantasy has. Fantasy is useful for growth in art, science, poetry, etc. But in prayer, it is helpful but not useful in the long run. Normally, most of our meditations and hours of prayer are merely spent in wonderful fantasies. Such prayer cannot be termed genuine prayer if it does not produce any positive effect in our life. Therefore, we should check the work of fantasy during prayer to use it as an aid and leave it when it does not help us to grow in prayer. Precisely what type of fantasies we have or what are its useful functions? There are four important useful functions of this interior sense. They are oniric, aesthetic, practical, and speculative. Let us see what is oniric or oniric. You can pronounce it in both ways. This is a function that takes place normally when we are asleep. Dreams are the outcome of this function. During rest, fantasy is very active, very often producing images of every kind. It functions in such a way that everything in the dream world seems true and beyond our control. The experiences are fantastic, marvelous, but unreal. Such experiences can occur even during prayer. They need not be from God. They could be attributed to our relaxed attitude during prayer. That is why wakefulness or awareness during prayer is highly recommended. Speaking of dreams, I remember I had the dreams of, sitting with Pope Francis and having a cup of coffee. And one occasion, Pope Francis was reading my book and I was close to him and he appreciated me. So these are all, happenings in the dream. They are not real. They are called oniric. Now the next one is aesthetic. Aesthetic, it is a harmonious combination of the images gathered in the mind but used by the fantasy through which one is able to produce something new. This harmonious blend of images results in inventions, poetry, art, paintings, novels, drama, skits, etc. Even during prayer, we could fall a prey to the functioning of the fantasy, producing wonderful images of heaven, angels, beautiful scenes, etc. We cannot attribute such experiences as coming from God. It could be also, but they need not be coming from God. Hence, we need to strive to be indifferent to such experiences, pinning our hope in God. The third function of fantasy is practical. At times, in our life, we struggle to obtain a solution to a problem. In spite of our efforts for days together, we are unable to obtain a concrete solution for our problems. But as time passes on, all of a sudden, we get the concrete answer to the problem or a solution to the problem. The fantasy is at work and finds a solution on its own with the help of the dormant but active intellect. When we are at prayer, we could also look for solutions for our own personal problems. An idea may strike us. Can we call this intervention of God? At this point, we need to discern well the action of God. If a solution for our problem is obtained and this solution does not in fact fall in line with the fruits of the Holy Spirit mentioned in Galatians chapter 5 verses 22 to 23, then such a solution must be dismissed as coming from the practical function of the fantasy and not from God. The last one is speculative function of the fantasy. This function allows the growth of science and religion. Myths, symbols, and images in religion are an outcome of the speculative function of the fantasy. We could attribute a lot more to this function of the fantasy. For example, new findings in the field of technology, science, medicine, etc. This function of the fantasy can be active during prayer. Finding out many new ideas on the gospel passages we read or any other spiritual passage we read before our prayer. The production of ideas during prayer need not be from God. They could be simply the result of the speculative function of the fantasy. Therefore, dear friends, it is very important to understand that these functions of the fantasy can be a help to prayer, but they can never be regarded as prayer. We need to discern the subtle functioning of this interior sense in order to check its inordinate nature so that there could be space for real prayer. As I have insisted in my past episodes, prayer is not producing images or imaginations or trying to be active during prayer. Rather, just abandoning ourselves in the hands of the Lord. In the stillness of silence, in the depth of our heart, how God communicates at times we may not know. But one thing is certain, if our prayer is genuine, there is a tremendous experience of peace at the gut level, or rather I would say at the heart level. And when you finish your prayer, you feel that inner strength to face any reality in your life. But when we play with our fantasies and with our imagination, and we could say that we had an entertaining time of prayer, that need not be genuine prayer at all. So it requires very often to approach our spiritual directors who are knowledgeable, who are capable of guiding and directing the souls in their journey to God. If a person is not knowledgeable in the field of prayer, sometimes spiritual guides and spiritual directors can mislead you in your pursuit of real experience of God. And therefore, that is why the church very often insists, and religious communities especially, and I would suggest this could be also a suggestion to lay people, you, my dear brothers and sisters, when you cannot pray, when you are struggling with prayer, do not limit your prayer to imagination. Do not limit your prayer to just vocal prayer. Don't limit your prayer to fantasizing the beautiful sceneries in your mind. That could lead you to just at the periphery of your prayer experience. You require to go deeper into your faith experience and understand how God is leading you through your daily life. That requires guidance, that requires a spiritual direction, that requires also sometimes to read some books on spirituality and especially on prayer that can really guide you and help you to go forward in your spiritual adventure. Let us ask the Lord to guide us. Never give up prayer. Always pin your hopes on attaining that genuine prayer which will produce certainly the fruits of the Holy Spirit mentioned by St. Paul in Galatians chapter 5 verses 22 to 23. Let us try to pray, and God will certainly help us. God bless you.